Welcome to episode number 2 of the Staple Landscapes Podcast. Today, I'm very lucky to be joined by Jim DelPrete from BeanTown Home Improvements. Thanks for joining me. It's
Absolutely.
great to meet you.
Same here.
So tell me a little bit about your company. I mean, you guys cover a lot of different service areas.
We do. We're based out of Halifax, Massachusetts on the South Shore, and we're primarily an exterior remodeling / renovation company. We focus primarily on roofing, siding, windows, doors, gutters, decks, skylights. Don't really do any new construction. It's really just the remodeling of what the homeowner has.
Right.
We will cover pretty much everything east of Worcester. We've been to Methuen, we've been down to Dennis, but most of our business is really south of Boston to the Cape, out to the, let's say, North Attleboro area.
Gotcha. So how'd you get into doing all this type of work?
I'm a third-generation builder.
That's awesome.
It's in my blood.
Yeah.
I've been doing this my whole life, one way or the other.
Right.
And after a number of years, came back to it, and I love it. I love interacting with homeowners. I love interacting with my crew, and I like being out in the field as much as I am in the office.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Breaks it up.
So just to give people an idea of where I want this conversation to kind of go,
Sure.
I'm going to run through some questions just to hit most of your service areas so people
Sure.
can get knowledge about all the different things that you do.
Absolutely.
So I want to start with roofing and decks.
Okay.
So first thing I was wondering is what preventative maintenance can the average homeowner do to make their roof or deck last longer? Because you see it a lot with especially decks falling apart
Sure.
over time.
Sure. I mean, there's a couple of things. Let's just touch on the first, especially with roofs. Trees. If you've got trees that are close to the house, aside from the fact that it could be clogging your gutters, trees will bring in moss, lichen, and other debris. When it comes to roof staining, let's say that you might see on a house, it's purely cosmetic, but when you see homes that have moss on the home, if you were to actually scrape the moss off, you would see pits in the shingles.
Wow.
So it literally eats away at the shingle. So one of the biggest things I would say as far as really the overall appearance of your home, try to keep the trees back. It'll keep everything a lot cleaner. Same thing with the deck. And then as far as, I guess you could say maintenance is really the next one, whether it be a roof or whether it be a deck, cleaning it. Now, with a roof, it could be as simple as, brushing it off every once in a while when you get leaves and what have you. With a deck, just because it's more of a flat surface, you're maybe brushing it off or pressure washing it off to get off the algae, to get off the moss and the lichen again. And then, just maintaining it, whether you put a stain down or what have you.
Yeah. Do you have a recommendation for what to do in terms of staining it?
So when it comes to a deck, it all depends. I mean, if you have a pressure-treated deck, which is wood, basically infused with chemicals so that it doesn't rot so fast, when you put a new deck up, you've got to wait 8 months to a year before you can stain it because the wood is still too wet. But after that, once you get a stain on, I would say keep up with it every couple of years. Whether it's a clear stain like a Thompson's water sealer or something that's more of a stain or a paint, try to keep up with it on a regular basis.
Right.
Yep.
So for someone that does the whole 9 yards, they get the pressure treated wood, they do the staining every couple of years.
Yep.
What is the expected additional lifespan of that deck versus someone that kind of hacks it together, so to speak?
That can be tough to say because, of course, there's a lot more that goes into play aside from just the maintenance of the deck. If you're in an area where you do have a lot of trees, of course, and it's shaded all the time, so the deck is always damp and wet, it's not going to last as long.
Right.
On the flip side, if your deck is always out in the sun beats the heck out of everything. I used to have a pressure-treated deck, which after about 20 years and replacing a few boards here and there, it had to go.
Yeah.
You might be able to get an additional 5 to 10 out of it if it's stained. Mine was not. Mine was just left as is. So I didn't do any kind of maintenance. Granted, I moved in sort of at the last tail end of it, but yeah, about 20 years on a pressure-treated deck, you can get maybe another 5 to 10 depending on how well you maintain it.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
So what are some of the common corners that people tend to cut or even that contractors tend to cut when putting these decks and roofs in?
Well, let's see. I mean, there's a lot on both sides. When it comes to homeowners, I would say not really setting enough money aside for what needs to be done. If you're not in the business, of course, you have no idea what a deck or roof may cost. And I think going into any kind of project and saying, this is all that I have to spend is X, but to get it done properly is X plus 30%, that could be a big jump. So trying to have enough set aside, or at least be willing to explore the possibilities to get it done right. Of course, everybody has a budget. And then, from a contractor side, cutting corners, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of guys out there that will use inferior products because they're trying to give the homeowner that low number they want.
Right.
Another one that I see is a contractor putting a second layer on a roof. So you're putting a new roof over an old existing roof. By code, you could do up to 2 layers. Believe it or not, I've seen up to 7 on a house. But what most homeowners don't know is that if you look at the warranty claims with Owens Corning, GAF, Certainteed, they all say for the warranty, it has to be on a clean roof.
Right.
So if you put a new roof over an old existing and you don't strip it, you're not going to get a warranty. So there's another way to cut corners that can bite you in the long run. As far as the homeowner's end, a lot of homeowners, well, I shouldn't say a lot, maybe 30% of the time I see them going out looking for the cheapest guy.
Yeah.
If you're looking for cheap, you're going to get cheap, you're going to be the person that has the problems, and then you're going to wonder, why did I have all these problems? Well, because you were looking for cheap. And sadly, one of the things that we see a lot of is homeowners hiring contractors that are not licensed or insured. Right. Yes, if we're licensed and insured, we do charge more. The licenses, yeah, it's expensive, but it's the insurances, especially if you're doing roof. Roofing insurance is extremely expensive. And from the homeowner's standpoint, I don't think homeowners really realize that if they hire someone that, never mind the license piece, but is uninsured, and that guy falls off the roof and gets hurt, guess who he's going after?
You.
The homeowner. Yeah. So for the homeowner's sake, always make sure the license is insured. Don't cut that corner because it'll bite you eventually.
Right.
But aside from that, those are the biggest corners that people cut when it comes to roofs. When it comes to decks, it's not quite as bad, so to speak. But again, same thing, licensing and insurance. Insurance is important, but maybe not as insurance as the licensing, because in this case, now you've got decks which have a lot more structural components. And they're not 25, 30 feet in the air. Most of them are 4 to 6 feet, but you still want things to be done properly.
Right.
And if homeowners don't get it done properly and they don't sink footings in deep enough past the frost line, then their deck is going to heave and move. And they just spent all this money, and within a couple of years, their deck is crooked.
Right.
And then they wonder why.
So if you were hiring someone to either put in a roof or deck for your own home, what are the types of questions you should ask them, or what should you be looking for? What are the things that you would want to say to that contractor before having them come in?
Absolutely. So me being the homeowner, asking a contractor to come in, are you licensed? Are you insured? Yes. Okay. I want to see copies. Okay. There's also 2 websites for the state in which a homeowner can search for the home improvement contractor's license and my construction supervisor's license. Right. Because like I tell homeowners, I can pull my license out of my wallet and show you. But it doesn't mean the state didn't yank it. Yeah. So you want to see the licenses, and you want to see the insurance. They might not have a copy of insurance right then and there, but when the job goes to start, I would like a copy of our certificate of insurance that, in a perfect world, would not only list the contractor and any subcontractors as additionally insured, but the homeowner as additionally insured. So basically what that does is it extends the contractor's insurance and covers the homeowner at the same point in time.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that's important. Next thing, when the job starts, where's the permit?
Right.
By law, it's supposed to be posted, visible from the street. So if a contractor shows up and he's got his licenses and he has his insurance, make sure the permit's in hand. Right. Another validation, so to speak, is that when I go to pull a permit, I have to give my licenses and my insurance to the building department. Otherwise, they won't give me the permit. So there's another validation that if they show up and they've got your permit, the town has already done some sort of check on that as well.
That's a big thing. I mean, especially when it comes to liability for things going wrong. Yeah. I know I had a major problem in my apartment a little while back, and they had to do a ton of work. All of it definitely required a permit, but it's it's Boston housing, so didn't pull a permit. I had issues that came close to turning into a legal problem afterwards. Sure. I wouldn't have been able to prove that they did any of the work because they didn't have the permit out. Yep. They never pulled a permit.
Gotcha.
On it. But yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up.
Absolutely.
So just to transition to more of a general topic, because you do a lot of work on the exterior. Obviously, it's fall. We're coming up on classic New England winter.
Yay.
Which I'm not looking at. Yeah, exactly. What are some of the things that people should be doing to prepare the exterior of their home to survive the winter?
Sure. Probably the first thing that comes to mind is get your darn gutters cleaned. We've all driven by a house where you see a 2-foot tree growing out of a gutter.
Right.
People, I don't think, really realize, if you have gutters, how important it is to keep them clean, because of the fact that if they're clogged, then everything's going to back up. And when it backs up, more often than not, it comes in the house. You might spend $150 to $200, $250 a year, depending on the size of your house and how high it is, to get them clean. But that is the cheapest thing that a homeowner can do, either themselves if they're comfortable getting on a ladder, or hiring somebody to do.
Right.
Aside from that, making sure that the exterior of the home is sealed as tight as possible. So check areas where water and debris may collect, roof lines and what have you, maybe even on window sills, depending on how they're put together, and make sure that everything is caulked. If you look around the window, of course, one of the big things we see as far as leaks is right on the sill, where water can get in and not only damage that wall, but then it runs down the wall to the second floor, third floor, what have you. So making sure that everything is caulked, making sure that everything is sealed. Check to see if there's any issues on the siding. This year, or past couple years, I should say, there's been a lot of issues with woodpeckers.
Yeah.
So there's holes all over the place. So do you want to leave that exposed during the winter time?
Right.
If you can get it repaired, simply get it repaired. If you can't, and you have a shingled home, in some cases it could be a simple matter of sliding a piece of flashing up behind the shingle just to cover the hole for the winter time, just to get you through until spring so you can fix it then.
Right.
You could always go through, check your foundation, make sure there's no cracks. Over time, everything settles, things move. Sometimes minor cracks are unimportant and don't go all the way through, and of course some actually do. In those cases there, because of course after winter we have spring, we have all the water from the thaw, it might be good to get those sealed. And then the next piece is, it's more of an inside piece, so to speak, but make sure that you have enough insulation in your attic. That's a big piece that we could always touch on a little bit later, but we'll certainly save you some frustrations, some money, and potential ice dams come wintertime.
Right. Well, actually, now that you brought it up, the topic of insulation, I think there are a lot of different moving parts in terms of what makes a good insulated home.
Sure.
From your experience, what is the most important part of that equation, and what can people do? What's something easy that people can do to make their home better insulated?
Sure. So the absolute first thing I'm going to say is call Mass Save. If you're not familiar with Mass Save, it's an organization that is basically funded by the electric companies, National Grid, N-Star, and several others. Now, if you live in a town where you have your own electric municipality, you are not able to enjoy the fruits, if you will, of Mass Save. But for example, I live in Halifax. It's National Grid. So in something like that, they will come in and do an assessment on your home. Not just insulation, but they'll actually check your furnace, they'll check insulation on the walls, they'll look in your attic, and they'll make sure your ventilation is okay. The biggest reason why I want to say this is because when they look at your attic and they figure out, okay, you've got an R19 and they want to bring it up to an R38, let's say, and they want to blow in another 10 inches of insulation, let's just say that cost is $3,000.
Right.
Okay? Mass Save will cover 75% of that.
Wow.
Run the math. What's that? $2,100?
Yeah.
So now you're only left paying $900. You could hire a contractor like myself or any other insulation company, but why? Why pay us full price when Mass Save will foot 3/4 of the bill? So first thing I always tell any homeowner is to call Mass Save first, have them do the assessment, and see what they can do for you.
Right.
But as far as the insulation in the home, let's just focus on the attic. Back in the day, of course, insulation codes were a lot different than what they are now, and most homeowners don't have sufficient insulation in the attic. The biggest thing that homeowners, I think, do not understand is that after we had all the snowstorms in 2015, everybody was having
It was a rough
issues.
year.
Yeah, it was a very, very rough year. And people that have never had problems just because of the sheer volume of the snow. But a lot of homeowners needed a new roof, and in several cases, the homeowner said, "Oh, we had all these ice dams. I want to put a new roof on the house." And my response is, "Well, we can put a new roof on the house, but it's not going to stop your ice dams." Ice dams occur for two reasons and two reasons alone: improper or insufficient ventilation and insulation in your attic. That's it. The biggest heat loss in any home, if you have pull-down stairs to go up in your attic, is right there. What most people don't realize is that underneath that set of stairs is just a little 1/4 inch, 3/16 of an inch thick piece of lawn. There's no insulation. So in the wintertime, a large portion of your heat is going up through the stairs, warming up the attic. Now the attic should be the same temperature as outside, or as close to that as possible. What it then does is it starts to warm up the roof from underneath, and it starts to melt the snow from underneath. Then as the water runs down the roof and gets past the exterior wall, so if your soffit hangs over 8 inches or a couple of feet, that's all ice cold. That's where it refreezes and causes the dam. And then everything backs up from there. So my suggestion on something like that, again, Mass Save can help address this. They'll put in additional insulation over the ceiling to help keep just the overall heat down. But they can also supply you with an attic box, which basically is a box that goes right over the top of the stairs of the attic to keep the heat in. They will also go a step further to make sure that if you have, let's say, recessed lights or fans in the bathroom, they will air seal around that as well. Keeps the air in, i.e. the moisture, because you don't want moisture going in the attic, but also the heat. So the biggest thing I would say again is you can't have too much insulation in your attic, but then the next step is to have enough airflow so that if heat is escaping into the attic, you have enough airflow coming in and going out to bring it out to keep everything nice and cold. A house perfectly insulated or very well insulated should have no icicles on it. That's a telltale sign right there.
I'm really glad that you brought all that info up about Mass Save, because I certainly didn't know about that. I think it's...
A lot of homeowners don't. And it's a no-brainer, especially the money that they can save.
Yeah, absolutely. Staying on the topic of insulation, I know that you do a lot of work with windows and doors. What are some of your best recommendations for having windows and doors replaced, or things to avoid?
Sure. Well, I guess it comes down to trying to understand what the homeowner wants. You know, do they really need the window replaced? Do they need it repaired? And then weighing the cost differences. Same thing with doors. So when it comes to doors, I mean, if a door needs to be replaced, you can usually tell a lot quicker because the door's not functioning, let's say. It's not closing properly. In some cases, it could be minor repairs. Maybe the hinges are loose that could be fixed. But maybe the door's out of square. Maybe it wasn't installed correctly. Maybe the door has warped over time. Old wood doors over time can do that. You know, so as far as having a homeowner do that, my suggestion would be to find a reputable contractor that's licensed and insured, that's willing to give you some options on door styles. And they do vary considerably in costs. Just to give you a rough idea, on a regular front door with no side lights, you could spend anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000.
Wow.
It's a big difference. And there's differences not only because of the options within each style, if there's glass, if there's no glass, if it's painted or not painted, but also differences of brands. Okay. And typical front door install, realistically, should take no more than a day. Yeah, you might find some rot and whatnot, but a typical install will take us 4 to 5 hours, so there's extra time in case you run into issues. Windows, you know, windows, there's a little bit more to windows, so to speak. They're not as standard as a door is, you know. And in most cases, we have gone into homes where they might have 20 different windows and 11 different styles. So not always the same. There's, in general, 2 different types of windows. There's replacement, and then there's new construction. A new construction, let's start there. That basically means you're going to take the window out of the house, you're going to take the outside trim out, you're going to take the inside trim out, right down to the studs. You're going to put a brand new window in, it's going to get new interior trim, new exterior trim, and be sealed in place. Typically speaking, a new construction window is your most expensive because it is the most amount of work.
Right.
And as a general rule of thumb, they're usually about $1,000 north. Okay. A replacement window is just the opposite, where let's say that you have a wood window in the house and you don't want to go the full route of a new construction and you want to try to keep your costs down a little bit. You can do a replacement window. A replacement window basically takes this new window and sticks it inside the bones of the old one. So what we do is we take the top and bottom sash out, and we take the guts of the window out. But the window sill stays. Usually the inside trim stays, and then we put them in from the outside. In some cases, we put them in from the inside. One of them usually has to be removed and replaced. The only downside, per se, to a replacement window is because you're putting a window in a window, it's going to get smaller.
Right.
In some cases, it could be an inch all the way around. It could be 2 inches all the way around. If you have a big window, that's not a problem. But if you have a small double hung window that's already 15 inches wide and you're going to put a tiny one inside of it, things get very, very small quickly. So that could dictate which way you go. A typical replacement window, from my experience and my personal belief, you really shouldn't be spending anything less than $500 to $600. There are plenty of companies out there that, $299 a window. Typically speaking, when I buy a window, it costs me $300,
right,
give or take. So if you want a quality window with a quality install, you're going to be around $500 to $600. It could be more with different options and glass packages and grids and whether it's painted or white, but typically speaking, replacements around $500 to $600 north, and a new construction's around $1,000 north.
Gotcha.
Yep.
How about, I know you also do work on skylights, and I didn't realize there's actually a lot that goes into that.
There is.
Maybe just speaking broadly about skylights, what's kind of your advice for having a skylight installed, or what to avoid before having one installed?
Sure. So skylights, obviously they can let a lot of light into the house. And when done properly, they're not a problem. But of course, that's usually the case with anything. When it's installed improperly or properly will dictate. So in a perfect world, adding in skylights or a sun tunnel. A sun tunnel basically just looks like a tube, has a little dome on the top. It looks like a little R2-D2 that's just stuck on the roof that helps to bring in some light, maybe in an area small where you don't have the room to put a big, massive skylight. But they do. They'll let a lot of light in, and you have options of skylights that are fixed, that never open. You have skylights that are manual operation, where basically you have a pole, you crank it open. And then you have skylights that are now solar.
Oh, wow.
The solar ones are very, very cool because you no longer have to have a pole to open it. And from my experience, most homeowners that do have skylights with a manual pole, and I ask them, when's the last time you opened it? I have no idea where the pole is. We haven't opened it in 15 years. Yeah. Or, the pole's around the corner and I'm too lazy to go get it.
Yeah.
The cool thing with the solar skylights, Massachusetts is giving a 30% federal tax credit through the end of this year. It's been going on for quite some time. I'm going to say 7 or 8 years. As of next year, it drops to 26, and then so on. So they're great as far as getting fresh air in as well as light. The install is critical. It really, really is. In a perfect world, you're going to do it when the house is being built, new construction. Okay? Can we cut one in after the fact? Of course we can. We always can do that. It's just a matter of flashing everything and integrating it into the roof that you have currently. Really, the best brand, from my opinion, that is out there is Velux. They are truly one of the only brands still left around. A lot of the other businesses have gone out. But in any case, it comes down to install. BeanTown Home Improvements is a 3-star certified installer with Velux. And why is that important? And this is something I want to spend a minute on. Typically speaking, when we do a roof, I'm going to say 30% of the time there are skylights involved. Velux requires certain things to be done so that the warranty, so that everything meets the warranty, so to speak. For example, within the package they actually give us white ice and water shield. It's no different than any other ice and water shield, only that it has a white coating on it, but it's theirs. Okay. When we install the skylight, we have to use that around the perimeter. Okay, have to. If you don't get a warranty. Now, we all use ice and water all the time, and I've seen plenty of guys feel, hey, the Grace ice and water is just as good as everything else, and it very well may be.
Right. But
if you don't use their ice and water, you won't get the warranty. So that's important to know. The other thing is we actually do a lot of business, or a lot of work, I should say, on mobile homes and trailers. And if you've been through some of the parks, you realize that a lot of the roof pitches are very, very low. So what Velux basically says is there's a skylight called a curb mount skylight. So if you think of a simple square, what we do is we actually take that square skylight and we put it on a curb. What we do is we take a 2x6, we lay it on its side and build basically a box to get it 6 inches or 5.5 inches up off the deck. That's called a curb, and that's called a curb mount skylight. Anything below a 3-pitch on a roof has to be a curb mount skylight. Now, just to quickly explain what a 3-pitch is, a 3-pitch is a very, very low pitch. If you're looking at my arm here, let's just say that this is 12 feet, okay? A roof pitch of 12, or 12 means for every 12 feet it goes out, it goes up 12 feet. Okay. So a 12 pitch is a perfect 45, okay? So a 3-pitch means that for every 12 feet out, it only goes up 3 feet. So it's very shallow, okay? The thing that I've seen is a lot of companies that are not certified with the skylight manufacturer will go out and just get a standard skylight and pop it in place.
Right.
And then we get calls from homeowners that say, hey, we had this skylight installed by roof company X 3 years ago, and it's leaking. We go out, we take a look at it, we see it's a deck mount skylight, we check the pitch, we find out it should be a curb. Right off the bat, we know what it is. Right. We go to the homeowner, we tell the homeowner, and we basically tell them that your skylight was installed by someone that wasn't certified with Velux, and sadly, you don't have a warranty, because if Velux comes in and sees that, they're going to tell you, well, the wrong skylight's here. So again, having someone that is certified is really important. Right. But whether you put them in before or you put them in after, they really are a nice addition, especially in those dark rooms in the home.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just curious, I know you mentioned this a bit ago, sure. But with the solar skylights, do those act as like a solar panel that like contributes to the energy production of your home?
No. Okay. So it's a closed system. So on the skylight itself, if you're standing outside looking at somebody's roof with the skylight, what you'll see is the skylight. At the bottom of the skylight, you'll see there's an actual solar panel, and there's actually a rain sensor. The rain sensor, when it rains, notices the rain and it closes. The panel itself just is for the skylight. Nothing else. So it's totally independent.
That's still pretty cool, though.
It's slick. It's very slick. And nowadays they've kind of gone away from the little computers that we would stick on the wall to operate the skylight to being able to operate it from your phone.
Wow.
And if you have blinds, you can set up programs. You can operate, I think, up to 50 skylights, at a time. Yeah, it's cool.
That's really,
and the rebate is really, really great, which is why they're so popular right now.
Yeah, a lot of good rebates that I think people probably don't know about in terms of the solar or renewable energy infrastructure. But moving to a bit of a different topic,
sure.
One of the reasons why I was really excited to have you in is because you run a great blog off of your website, which anyone can find.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure the exact URL, but if you look up BeanTown Home Improvements, it'll come right up.
Exactly.
But you touch on a lot of really good tips for homeowners. One thing that I noticed you wrote about is DIY projects or do-it-yourself projects.
Sure.
So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about, what are some easy DIY projects for people to do to improve their home?
Sure.
And when can people kind of tell that a project is a little bit above their head, or you should bring someone professional in?
And of course, this is going to vary from person to person depending on what their skill set is and what their background is. For example, we were talking about cleaning gutters. If you're a guy like me that has a ladder that's tall enough and doesn't mind getting up there to do it, then I can certainly do it on my own. But if you don't have a ladder and you're afraid of heights, I certainly would not suggest doing that. Call a gutter guy and let him clean it. As far as things around the home, of course, if you've got basic tools, you can do things as far as tightening up doorknobs on doors, tightening up the hinges. If you get a door that's squeaky, hitting it with some WD-40 and what have you. Doing the caulking around windows and sealing up any places that might need to be touched. If there's any kind of carpentry involved, it really comes down to, again, I don't know what your skill set is. If you've got the basic tools and you know how to use them, then tackle it. But if there are those projects where, first of all, you say to yourself, geez, maybe I should hire somebody. Well, right then and there, then you should probably just hire somebody. Right. Because it's always better to do that than get halfway into it and then realize, oh boy, I've got a problem.
Yeah.
Especially, you don't know how big that problem could be. Maybe you need emergency service and now it's going to cost you more. When it comes to electrical work, I would always bring in a professional. When it comes to plumbing, I would always bring in a professional. When it comes to doing anything that really has safety, focused around it, such as building a deck 12 feet off the ground, I would hire somebody. And I think if everybody just kind of steps back for a second and figures out some of the basic DIY stuff, I can paint the door, I can maybe paint the house and do some other little things here and there, they'll be able to figure it out.
Right, yeah. And that's some of the simple stuff that you can probably save some money on. Which
Absolutely,
is good
absolutely,
for
and
the person.
especially if it's small. I mean, don't get me wrong. Everybody's different, but we're in a room here that's probably 10 by 14, and ceilings are drop-down ceilings, so that's a bad example. But you could probably paint the walls in here yourself within a couple of hours, a time, and a little bit of money. If you brought somebody in to do it, you're probably going to spend $300 to $400. In some cases, the job may be too small for a bigger company to do, so it's going to cost you more. So on something like this, you might want to tackle it.
Right. And staying on the topic of home projects, what would you say are some of, or maybe the most valuable home improvement that you can make to add value, or to add, to add value to your home?
So I pulled some information. I have a printout in one of my brochures that I showed to homeowners. It was a remodeling cost report from 2011, and they basically ran down within the New England area a report that basically says how much money are you going to get back based on what you're spending for roofing, siding, windows, doors, and so on. Okay, so the number one that I had found, siding replacement, roughly 79% of the cost can be recouped.
Wow.
And if you think about that, to me it makes sense. Why? Because when you drive by a home, what's the first thing you see? You see what the house looks like. And if the house doesn't look good from the outside, you don't even care what the inside looks like. Okay. Windows, 73% recouped.
Wow.
Again, because not only from the looks, but if it's drafty and you're doing an open house and it's mid-January and you can feel the drafts coming in, well, that tells you right there. Kitchens are only 76%, which is actually a lot lower than I would have expected.
Yeah.
But it's about 76%. And then the final one, which is actually higher than I expected, is decks, roughly 80%. So those are the four most. Now, roofing was listed in there, but sadly the report that I had also had an advertisement, and it was right over the number of what, so I could not tell you what the roofing number is.
Sure.
But honestly, it would not surprise me if it's in line with the rest of these.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. It's surprising, though, I agree with you about the kitchens, because that's the number one thing people want to upgrade before either purchasing a home or selling a home, which I guess is probably a good segue into my next question, which is, what are your top 3 do's and don'ts when preparing to sell a home?
So I would say definitely paint the walls, ceilings, what have you, especially if you've got a house with some crazy colors.
Right.
If you've got rooms that have pink walls and flaming green, you're going to want to tone it down to something more natural. So definitely that's suggestion number 1. 2 would be to fix anything that really needs to be fixed, whether it be damaged trim, squeaky doors, visible rot outside, roof repairs, and what have you. And then really just clean. When a homeowner that is looking to buy a house walks into a house, they don't want to see a dirty home. They don't want to see your laundry all over the place. Wash the windows, wash the doors, wash the floor, get rid of the clutter. Make it look like a house that you see on TV when they're doing a walkthrough on cribs. You want it to look nice. So those would be the 3 basic things that I would say. As far as the don'ts, I wouldn't invest a lot of money on any kind of new projects. Don't spend the extra $30,000 on that kitchen, putting in beautiful white cabinets, because the next person's going to want a country look and they're going to take them all up.
Right.
Same with the outside. I wouldn't change landscaping. Keep that stuff simple. I wouldn't overlook some of the items that I mentioned in the first, meaning if your roof on the outside of the house is in really, really bad shape, don't leave that the way it is.
Yeah.
When homeowners see roofs that look that bad, or the trim or the siding on the outside that looks that bad, to me, as a builder, when I see that, if you let your roof and your siding get that bad, that is indicative that there's most likely other problems.
Right.
Okay. So those are the 3 do's and don'ts.
Yeah, that's really good advice, especially what you mentioned about not taking on that really big project to change something big inside. I mean, it happens all the time.
Of course it does.
Because you move into a new house, that's the time that you're going to want to upgrade it and customize it and make it yours when you're moving in.
Absolutely.
So it's that's great advice. So that pretty much wraps up all of my questions about home improvement.
Sure.
But one thing that's really important that I want to touch on is you do something called Operation Payback to support local veterans. I'd love to hear more about what you do with that work.
Sure.
And how you've come into trying to support the community in that way.
Sure. I've always firmly believed, probably the way that I was brought up, that, you respect your elders, your teachers, your police, your fire, and you take care of your veterans. If this country wasn't free, I wouldn't be able to have started my business years ago. So for me personally, even though I'm not a veteran and I don't have any veterans in my immediate family, it's the number one thing that's the most important to me, to be honest with you. So for years, I wanted to put together a program, and shame on me for years being so busy that I never sat down and put it together. And I started it in 2017. Excuse me. And at that point, I reached out to my suppliers. I reached out to my dumpster companies to try to figure out where could I get assistance to try to pull this together. And after sitting down and putting my head together, what I basically said is, we're going to offer a new roof of roughly 20 square. 20 square is basically 2,000 square feet of roof space, okay, which is not indicative of how much space is in the house, but 20 square, free of charge. It's open to any veteran, U.S. Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, Marines, Navy. Their house has to be their house, not a rental.
Right. And
they've got to be in the Plymouth, Bristol, or Norfolk counties. Basically, if you go to my website, www.beantownhi.com/payback, you'll see all of the requirements, if you will. And if you're a veteran, go in, put your name in, and in 6 days, on October 31st, we randomly choose someone. Awesome. And then usually within the first week or two of November, we give them a new roof. We've done it 2017, 2018, this year obviously 2019. And this year we even took it a step further, where we're about to do a roof for Habitat for Humanity for a veteran. And we had one pop up I think it was 2 weeks ago, where the stars aligned. We talked to a homeowner that was a veteran, and her story just pulled on our heartstrings. Yeah. She didn't have anyone, she didn't have any money, needed a roof badly. I started making calls to my suppliers. I called Owens Corning. I asked Peter Glebus, my rep, and I told him everything. By the time I finished, he says, "Jim, what do you need?" And I said, "This is what I need." And he said, "Done." So we're now going to give another roof away to another veteran, just because. Yeah. And I'm really glad that we can do it. It makes me feel good at night, and that's the only reason I do it. It's what I believe is right. I sleep well at night. And I couldn't be happier. Yeah,
it's great. It's just really great to hear something positive like that.
Absolutely.
And especially for Veterans Affairs. I mean, I won't go political at all, but sure. Obviously it's a very charged climate that we live in. Yep. Whether you are on either side of the aisle, right. People tend to forget that caught in the crossfire are all these veterans who've Correct. Been a little bit left behind. We don't do enough to support our veterans right. when they come home from what they do overseas, and
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's really impactful, and I'm really glad that you do what you do with that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So before we go, how can people either find you for work? Maybe sure. I don't know if people can contribute to the payback for Operation Payback. Yep. But yeah, how can people contact you?
So you can give us a call at the office anytime, 781-293-1417. Or you can find us online at www.beantownhi.com. And my email is simply jim@beantownhi.com. Give us a call, let us know what kind of project you have or what you're thinking of doing. Check out the website for projects that we've done and the services that we offer, and I hope to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us again, and it was a real pleasure talking to you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you again.